Growing up, I really struggled with my cultural identity. I was too South Asian to be British, and I was too British to be South Asian. And I really wish that I could find stories that really took into account my British South Asian identity. And therefore, I started my own podcast called It's Pretty Personal, which is all about sharing South Asian stories. And I'm Preeti. You get the fun, right? Welcome to this little corner of the internet and my first ever YouTube video. So surreal to even say, but I've been wanting to do this for a really long time. So in this video, I want to share more about who am I, but also a bit more about the podcast, why I started the podcast, and also what you can expect from the pod. So a little bit about myself. Hi, I'm Preeti. I am born and raised in London, which in my opinion is the best city in the world. Literally, I am so lucky and privileged to be born in London. I was born into a Punjabi Sikh family, and I'm also the oldest girl in a brown household. So yep, I had that too. Growing up, I was actually really shy, extremely shy. I used to be the quiet girl in the corner doing her own thing, not having many friends, and that is the complete opposite to what I am now. So I definitely feel I grew a lot when it came to my confidence. I was also really obsessed with film and TV, and I think my dream job growing up was to be a film or TV or radio presenter. But I feel I really struggled with that because there wasn't many people that looked like me on TV at that time presenting. I think the other thing that was really difficult was trying to manage these two very different cultural identities that I had, especially when it comes to growing up in the UK and being British, but also having South Asian roots and South Asian heritage. So for me, both of them growing up were always battling it out, literally some sort of dance battle, especially when I had to make really big life decisions like my career or my life goals or where I wanted to go for university. I think both sides really clashed, and I always for the longest time felt I had to only pick one side or the other side. And I didn't know that I can have a Hannah Montana best of both worlds situation when it came to my cultural identity. So when I was thinking about my career, I actually decided to go down the finance route and study accounting and finance at Loughborough University. And I got to move out for university, which was so incredible. For those of you who don't know, Loughborough is actually in the Midlands of the UK. And it's this really small, quiet town, but it's probably one of the best universities, in my opinion, anyways. And that was also such an incredible experience to be able to live by myself, but also to meet the best humans ever. I met my best friends at university. I got to do so many really, really cool stuff. I was a radio presenter for 2 years. I became a bongo dancer and I danced at huge competitions across the country. I got to dance with Diljit Dosanjh and all these different South Asian artists on their tours. It was just so cool. And a lot of that got to do with the fact that I just picked up bongo whilst I was in uni. I think after uni, I did follow quite a typical career path. So after uni, I got a grad job. I got a grad job at a tech company to do a finance rotation scheme, which was for 3 years. And alongside that, I just had to study for my chartered accountancy exams as well. And that was going great until COVID happened. And when COVID happened, my finance career started to really negatively affect my mental health. And it got to the point where I really started to question whether or not I made the right career decision for me. And I think over time, when I was thinking about it more and more, I realized that this wasn't the profession that I wanted to continue with. So I decided to career switch and became a diversity and inclusion consultant instead. And I got to relocate to Amsterdam. So what else is there for you to know about me? I have traveled to 26 countries. I've just completed my first half marathon. And I have this podcast called It's Pretty Personal. So for me, this podcast is all about championing South Asian stories and to have everyday conversations, but from the lens of being South Asian. The idea is to have conversations that are important for our community that we don't normally have. And I think the other thing is the fact that as we get older, life can get a little bit more tricky to navigate. And that's why I've always wanted these podcast episodes to not only be educational and inspirational, but also be relatable and for someone to come and find comfort in these stories, knowing that there's someone else out there that's going through something really similar to them. So they're not alone in going through that thing. And I think that's also one of the reasons why I started this podcast in the first place. For some context and a little bit of a backstory, I actually started this podcast back in 2020. And the reason behind it was the fact that I love listening to podcasts. I genuinely love them. On my commute, when I'm walking, when I'm at the gym, or even if when I'm in Tesco, if I'm going grocery shopping, I'll listen to a podcast. But for me, podcasts were a way to feel a little bit less alone, especially when it was a situation that I felt like nobody in my circle was going through. I used to turn to podcasts because I was like, there has to be someone in the world going through the same thing that I'm going through. And I did find a few podcasts, but I can never find any that really took into account my British South Asian identity. And therefore I kind of related, but I like didn't really relate, because sometimes you just want to listen to a story and be like, yes, like they get it, like they just get it, and you don't have to over explain like, yeah, like that's true, but that doesn't apply to me because of X, Y, and Z situation. So during COVID, I decided to create It's Pretty Personal with the idea of having these conversations, but through the lens of being South Asian, and for people to come to this platform and be like, do you know what? She just gets it. And I just don't need to explain it, and you just get it, and it's just easy and it's relatable. So that was the whole aim of it. Honestly, it has been such an incredible journey. Like, since 2020, we've released 40 episodes with such incredible humans talking about so many different topics. I've got to interview some incredible people as well, because the podcast is guest based, but also I sprinkle in a little bit of solo episodes as well. But I've also got to interview some like childhood like stars that I literally would feel like, oh my god, I would fangirl so much. If 8-year-old Preeti knew that like I interviewed these people, I think she would literally fangirl like so much. But also I got to learn about so many different topics from experts in those fields. And I think on a personal level, like this podcast has been amazing for me. I've also been able to learn so much. I've also got to meet so many new people. Like the inner shy girl in me, like she's felt so confident throughout this journey, and being able to just put herself out there and create this platform. And this mission of the podcast is like so special to me, because I really wish I had this growing up. I really wish that I was able to hear stories from other South Asians and really relate and feel like I'm not going through something alone, especially because certain topics are perceived differently due to our culture. So if I was going to explain this podcast in a few words, I would say everyday conversations, but from the lens of being South Asian. I think the other reason why I wanted to build this podcast was because I feel like there's such a lack of South Asian representation, especially in the podcast space, but also in mainstream media. I feel like for the longest time, there hasn't been that much South Asian representation in Western media, especially for people who are South Asian, brought up in the West. I think for the longest time, we've always just been like, oh yeah, but you have Bollywood. But again, I don't think it really takes into account the cultural identity that we have. And it's not just me. Like, look at all of these news articles as well that say exactly the same thing. South Asian people have been underrepresented for far too long, and our stories are also really important, and not just in the stereotypical way. And I would love to listen to more South Asian podcasts as well, because I always love supporting them, because like I said, there's not enough. So if there's any South Asian podcasts that you really enjoy listening to, link them down below, because I would really, really love to listen to them. And also if there's any topics that you're interested in listening to that you want me to do episodes on, again, comment them down below. So, who is this podcast for? This podcast is for anyone who feels like they're not quite Desi enough, and they're also not quite Western enough, and they're in this weird mishmash hybrid Hannah Montana kind of cultural identity where they're like, I actually don't know who I am, or I don't know where I stand. And this podcast is for them. We can actually all just be confused together. So if your cultural identity is with a South Asian heritage, but you've also been influenced from the West, then this podcast is for you. One is weekly uploads. So I actually have a whole new season of the podcast that I've been recording, which is going to be on video, hence the YouTube channel as well. So that is really exciting. Like, that is the first time I'm actually recording in like a big girl studio. And as someone who has been spending the last couple of years recording in her bedroom, in her pajamas, like no makeup, none of this, like no messy bun, PJs, comfy socks, just me and the microphone, is also like a really nice way to like say that I'm talking to myself, but I'm not, because I'm talking to people. But yeah, it's gonna be in a legit big girl studio. And like the moment I walked into that studio, I was just like, oh my god, like it feels so legit. Like it literally feels like a production now. And I've been taking so much behind the scenes footage, because I'm also a behind the scenes nerd. Like anytime like a film or a TV show that I like comes out, like the first thing I do is like watch the behind the scenes of it, because that is really interesting to me. And I'm always like so interested in how they created like the TV show or the film. So I also feel like podcasts are very similar. So I want to also be sharing some behind the scenes of that on my Instagram and my TikTok. So don't forget to check that out as well if you're also interested in the behind the scenes, and maybe like a few snippets of my life as well. So like I said, this podcast is going to cover so many different topics. I think love, relationships, dating, career, mindset, mental health, physical health, family, business, finance, just everything that makes us who we are as human beings, because there is so much that makes us who we are today. But the only thing is just that sometimes like the lens and our experiences and the way that we've been brought up kind of plays a part in how we experience those things. So keep your eyes peeled, because there's a whole new season coming out of the podcast. But if you can't wait, then there's also 40 other episodes on Spotify and Apple Podcasts that you can listen to in the meantime, which in my opinion they're quite good. And yeah, if you want to be one of the first to be notified about when new podcast episodes drop, then don't forget to hit subscribe and follow me on Instagram and TikTok at Pretty Personal. So yeah, I guess I will see you in the next one. Take care. Bye bye.